So, welcome back, listeners, to the next edition of the InnCoCells podcast. And this time we are joined by Eribert Vartsescher, who is the project lead for the Technical University of Darmstadt. Hello, Eribert.
Hi, Richard.
So, I guess we can start by asking you to tell us a little bit about your background and interests and where you work.
All right. So, as we are sitting in Darmstadt, so this is the place where I do work at the Technical University of Darmstadt in the department or the group of plant metabolic engineering. And my background is very much into plants. So I'm by training a pharmacist, and I studied pharmaceutical sciences, and I was always interested in plant metabolites, natural products, which are, of course, of many uses. And I did my PhD in pharmaceutical biology, and there I started to try to understand how plants can produce simply from CO2 and from air, from sunlight and water, very complicated chemical structures which can be or which are be of use for humans. And that's what I'm doing since then. And I try to understand how plants can do that. And of course, once you do understand that, at least a little, then you can try to modify or try to enhance levels of compounds or kinds of compounds and see what they can do.
Excellent. So would you say that this enhancing and modifying the nature of the compounds produced by plants is the major role of your organization in the InnCoCells project?
I would say so. Yes, it's basis of the project is the plant, the matter, the green stuff, and to obtain the maximum yield and a very defined compound level. So this is, I would say, the foundation of InnCoCells.
So, I mean, have you worked with similar projects before, and with a specific purpose of trying to increase the level of particular compounds made in plants?
Yeah, this is our all-day work, working on different, some medicinal plants, but also now in InnCoCells for cosmetic use. And we did that in single projects or in consortium. And this is done over the last two to 3 decades, actually.
So for our listeners, just to say that the InnCoCells project is actually the only project in this cycle of the Horizon 2020 program, which is dedicated purely to cosmetics. And as Heribert said, there we've all worked on earlier projects which involve the use of plants to produce, for instance, pharmaceuticals. But many of the techniques involved are actually the same. Heribert, would you be able to tell us, I don't know how much you're allowed to tell us, but what's your evaluation of how the project's going so far? We're at a fairly early stage, 6 months in at the moment, but we've just had our project meeting in Naples, and there was lots of good progress reported. What's your status from your side of the project?
Well, from a project which is only 6 months running now, so I think the outcome is quite good at that point. And especially as this group is very diverse, you have expertises from very many different fields. And what I think it's really important is that the people work together very good. And so this is a real collaborative project.
This is because, in part at least, because many of the project participants have worked together before for many years. In fact, I think we've collaborated in a couple of earlier projects even. Smart Cell was one of them back in 2009. But I think many of the project partners have worked together before in this context.
Absolutely. So there is already a strong connection between many of the partners. So we had a cost action on plant metabolic engineering, which lasted from 2011 till 2014. I think 30 to 50% of the participants were already there. Some of them were young investigators and now are more senior scientists already, which is nice to see. And that is already a strong tie between.
And this is excellent. It's also, good to see, because this evolution that you've described, where the young researchers in an older project become the leaders in a subsequent project, can be the project itself has contributed to their career development. And this is, of course, an important part of EU projects, is to do that, is to give people the chance to grow in their careers.
Yes, this is a most important point within our science projects. That's our, I would say, all-day business, educating students and, of course, enabling young PhD students to become scientists.
I think, a very important benefit too of the EU Horizons programme is that this development of career scientists from academic institutions can be married very closely to benefits for industrial partners.
Yes. And so as we are within academia, so we are in higher education, but the people, they need jobs and perspective, which is only for a small percentage within academia. And many will either go to industrial partners or maybe starting their own company, making a startup.
And the industrial partners, of course, benefit from the fresh innovation that comes from somebody who's been working in academia and producing results.
Well, they are benefiting, but it's mutual benefit, definitely. So we are providing maybe fresh ideas, but they provide experience and platforms and also access to markets.
Yeah, the bridge to the commercial side of the venture. Yeah, very important. Yeah. So going back to the work that's being carried out in the project at the moment, what would you like to see the project achieve? I know, again, we're only 6 months in and we've got 3.5 years to go, and it's a very ambitious project. But what would you personally like to see come as a result of the project?
So as we have very different work packages with different underlying techniques and potential outcomes, so there might be several things I would like to materialize. Regarding the work packages I'm involved in, it's a lot of technology development. So enabling plants or plant cell cultures, hairy roots to produce maximum biomass and maximum levels of metabolites, which is quite challenging. So usually they balance, do either or, and we try to do both. And if we would achieve that, that would be a major goal. And of course, as a whole consortium, we would love to have products on the market in the end or close to the market. And this is a major achievement. And as we were discussing that, outreach and education is also in our focus. So after 4 years project time, we would like to see stakeholders being engaged, public engagement, so lay people getting more ideas about what plants are capable of. So that would be a great achievement.
This is a very interesting topic because I was just thinking about asking you, for the listeners who are not of a scientific background, can you explain why it's so difficult to increase the amount of biomass that plants produce, so this would be the quantity of material, while at the same time getting the specific molecules that you want from them?
Well, although people might not be into molecular biology or genetics, everybody knows how a plant grows or does not grow, being a gardener or just having a potted plant on the balcony. So you see that they are highly dependent on environmental factors. And that is not just for the growth and biomass, but also for the ingredients. Maybe people might have recognized that the peppers might be more or less hot, depending on the weather conditions or summer temperatures. And these effects will also affect the yield of plants with some valuable ingredients for cosmetics. And therefore, we would like to have a standardized, more or less, procedure to produce quality or high quality over time, and also to get the maximum yield. So a lot of engineering effort to be done.
Yeah, so to a quick explanation for our listeners. So basically, the thing which makes peppers hot is a small natural product, capsaicin, and the techniques which you can use to increase the amount of capsaicin you get in your chilies is very similar to the techniques we're using to try and get higher yields of these cosmetic ingredients in our plant cell cultures and hairy roots and other systems. So it all links up, and it's there's a lot of experience that can be gained from other aspects of horticulture and plant biotechnology.
Or you might even rather block the production of a certain compound which might cause allergy or might have a pungent stench or whatever is unfavorable for your final product.
So an example there might be caffeine. You can block the production of caffeine in coffee beans. So on a personal level, we've just had our meeting in Naples, and it's not our first project meeting, it's our second, but the first one was completely online because of the COVID situation. I guess it must have been very nice for you to be able to see all your friends and colleagues in person again. And
absolutely.
Good, yeah. I mean, certainly that was my experience. Get a much better insight into what they're doing when you can communicate face to face rather than having to do it over a computer. So do you think that the move back from online to face-to-face communication is going to significantly boost the output of the project?
Yes, I would say so. And online or virtual communication, it's important because it's fast and you can just exchange information, but for a scientist, for a scientific project, I think what will be discussed beside the plenary sessions. So this is also very important. Brainstorming, getting new ideas, and just over a cup of coffee, and that is a very important aspect of meetings.
Yes, I think that's an interesting point about the training and the opening up the project by increasing public engagement. What sort of activities have you developed for the training aspect of the project in order to bring that new information aboard?
So as we have different or groups from very different fields, it's of great importance to train people with new technologies obtainable in other labs. And at the very beginning, we had in mind to do that on a workshop basis. So meeting somewhere, but of course, due to the pandemic, so this is not that easy nowadays. And therefore, we moved to the virtual space with that, at least for the time being, until we can do regular meetings again. And there we started with a series of short talks on a specific topic, which could be of interest for the members of the consortium, but also for broader public. So broader public, a scientific public, I mean, in that case. So we do the InnCoCells Academy, which are online talks and afterwards intense discussions. We started with a Nagoya protocol, which is more a regulatory issue than a scientific, but nevertheless extremely important for everybody who deals with living material like plants, like we do.
And just to let our listeners know, these Academy events are available to watch on our website, and they're linked directly to YouTube. So anyone is able to watch them. And the presentations that go alongside them, they are all downloadable from our website too. So honestly, anyone who's interested in the topic, wants to learn more about it, can just go to the InnCoCells website, InnCoCells.org, and find the material on our resources page. So do you think these events will have broad impact then beyond the consortium? What do you think they bring to the public who may not have heard about the kind of technologies we're talking about and may not be aware of the issues involved?
I hope that will get more attention. And we just started with the format, and it's all a matter of advertising it. And of course, we are within a scientific community, so that might be the first layer of interest. So people within the scientific community, but then on the second part, and that might be necessary to tailor the information towards a broader public. So we will have some stakeholder events where we can discuss with lay people about the scientific issues. Science communication, which is very important.
Yes, I agree with that. I mean, I think it's a great problem to communicate very technical language to people who have not been formally educated in that area. And it's important to be able to present the correct information without it sounding too technical or too confusing to people. And that's not to be condescending or arrogant about it. It's clear that in any field there are experts who know the complex terminology, but that information still needs to be conveyed to a wider audience who may not benefit from that knowledge. And especially when biotechnology could have such a great impact on society.
I think this is a point where we have to tell, especially the young scientists, that this is an important part of the work. Not just talking science to other scientists, but explaining science to the public. And therefore, they have to train and have to educate or be educated towards easy language and explaining what they are doing and why they are doing that, which is an important issue.
And the benefit that it will bring as well, because the message gets lost when people explain what they're doing and why they're doing it, but not what's in it for the people who are, especially, when it comes down to it, the public are going to want to know what their tax dollars, so to speak, are paying for. And that's one of the parts of it. So your metabolic engineering group is embedded within a larger biology department. Does it? Can you tell us a little bit about what that department does and how that fits in with because this is a technical university, so I guess it's focused more on applications and basic research.
Well, it's still focusing on basic research, and this is, of course, always an important part as we are educating students. And beside that, of course, we have a strong focus on application, as you said, is a technical university, and we have very strong ties to engineering departments, to electrical engineering, and we do a lot of synthetic biology, which might sound disturbing to people because synthetics doesn't sound like biology, but nowadays it's a lot of engineering with living matter.
So for the benefit of our listeners, can you just briefly explain what synthetic biology involves?
Yeah, if you start with biology, so it's mostly descriptive. You observe, you look on matter under a microscope, and then you describe behavior. But the more you understand on an organismal, on a network, and as well as a molecular level, the more you get the ability to manipulate without being in a negative sense manipulation. So that means to change genetic circuits and to change the being. So let's say microbial cell or even a plant. And this is what we would call starting of synthetic biology. If you would compare that to an engineer, and the ultimate way would be to build a machine from scratch. This is what an engineer does. We as a biologist cannot do that yet, at least, but we can start to alter parts and exchange them and get new properties from that.
And is there much of this as a component of the InnCoCells project?
It is, as I said, it's the metabolic engineering part. Plants do contain a genetic setup to produce chemical compounds of interest for us with cosmetic value, and understanding how it does that is one part. And then to maybe enhance the content of a given compound while reducing the content of another unwanted compound. So this would be the engineering part. And as well, getting plants producing more with a higher biomass as well.
So do you think there's a value then to having this genetic manipulation in the project, and how does that fit in with the, there is a lot of hostility towards genetic modification, and how is that going to fit in with the public's attitude towards cosmetic products?
Well, this is a very delicate topic because people, as you said, consider the term genetic modification as something bad and not really recognizing that they mostly doing it themselves. For example, if you have a potted plant and you do some graftings from one to the other, this is what you do. It's engineering, it's cloning. And of course, there is concern about that, about the safety. But as we are doing that since thousands of years, since onset of agriculture, without any adverse effects, so I think we can consider that safe. Nevertheless, addressing the people's concerns, engineering doesn't necessarily mean shifting genes from one organism to the other. It could also be very precise manipulations of the genome, just editing one single letter in the whole code. That gives you complete new meaning. And therefore, you can get better products. And this, in the end, is what counts, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to emphasize, I think, that the type of engineering you're talking about, where you have these very precise modifications, happens in nature all the time. I mean, mutations like that happen in nature all the time. It's virtually impossible to tell the difference between something like that that's happened in nature and something that's been engineered. And, anyone out there who enjoys cheese or beer is enjoying the benefits of biotechnology every day. So there has to be a point where we, face the reality that engineering is a benefit and not necessarily the boogeyman that it's made out to be. Well, that's fantastic, Herbert. Thank you very much. And that's about all, really, for this edition of the InnCoCells podcast. Join us next time for another installment, and we'll look forward to listening later. Thank you very much, everybody.